Okay, so this is going to be a study, a 5-week study on grace. Believe it or not, I'm probably the worst millennial when it comes to like presenting with electronics. So I really only have this for like one thing, and I don't plan on ever using it again. I'm not good with the PowerPoint slides. I mean, I am good, but since I do it all the time for, Monday through Friday, when I don't like touching Microsoft Office when I'm off the clock. So it's really hard to get me to use it. So we'll see how it works. Hopefully everything works. I also don't trust any technology because I understand how easy it is to break. So we'll see how this goes. I will have a video later in a second. There are some language, so like language that I wouldn't let my child say, but that I say, if that makes sense. So CRA, I'll spell it because I have a 5-year-old. CRAP is said. If you raise your hand, I'm not gonna. If you're okay with that, then we should be all right. It is a secular video, but I think what it says is, when I hear poignant things or almost what I would call godly things from secular people, I usually tend to listen to it more because I'm like, well, if they're saying that, what the heck is wrong with me? Right? And so, yeah, I said heck. I will say naked if I ever have to say it, if that passes. Then we'll do a little bit about me. I come from everywhere. And so I have a lot of different weird kind of experiences. So I've lived on the West Coast, I've lived in the Midwest, I've lived in Texas. And so asking me where I'm from kind of doesn't make any sense because I've moved more than Army kids. So all my friends in high school were Army kids. So I don't know where I'm from, might as well be Lubbock. So I'm from Lubbock. And I went to college at Abilene Christian, so don't hate me. I'm one of those people. We lost a tech yesterday, so I think we evened it out. So this is about grace. And I don't know if you've ever heard the joke about if you ever want to learn what a preacher's struggling with, you'll just listen to them, they'll tell you. Because it's usually what the preacher's talking about. It's kind of the same way with me. The reason I'm teaching on grace is because this is the number one thing I'm probably the worst at. I am terrible at extending grace. I'm terrible at accepting grace. I'm pretty terrible at a lot of things. So, you'll come to find out. And so we're going to be studying how we can extend grace, accept God's grace, and help hopefully extend God's grace to other people through this through the reading of Psalm 23. So we're gonna get out our Bibles now, if you brought them, or your phones, if you're my wife. And let's turn to Psalm 23. And I'm going to be talking enough, so I don't really want to read. So if somebody wants to read for us. And by the way, by the end of these 5 weeks, you will have Psalm 23 memorized, but you probably already have so already because it's like the most famous one. Nobody volunteers, they will be voluntold. I'm asking my wife to do it because then I have to go home with it.
I'm going to get confused because I have it memorized in King James Version because of my grandmother, but I'm reading it in NIV, so I'm going to get confused.
If you skip to the King James Version, you can go forward on Sunday. It'll be all right.
That's funny. Okay. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack
Psalm
nothing.
23.
King James Version is good enough for Peter and Paul, it's good enough for me.
Okay. The whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like 8 verses.
The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Okay. So today we're going to be focusing mainly on verses 1 through 3. And so it's going to get real annoying because as we keep going through this, we're only going to focus on 1 or 2 verses here and there. And then by the end of 5 weeks, we will have the whole context. So to start us off, grace. What is the definition to you of grace? Because go for it. And tell me your name. Sorry.
Oh, I'm a newbie. My name is Rod Rodriguez.
Rod. Okay.
An undeserved gift.
An undeserved gift. Grace is an undeserved gift. Anybody else? Surely that's not the only great definition people go off of. And we'll work with that. I like it. It is good. But some people say grace is what they say at the beginning of a meal. And I thought that's weird. How do you justify that with the biblical concept of grace? But anybody else? So grace is an undeserved gift. Okay. Everybody okay? I'm working with Alex, okay. Grace is an undeserved gift. How so? Would you say, does grace necessarily have to be, does it necessarily have to be divine? No?
I could give you a gift card, give you $25.
Do you have $25? I have a kid. I'll take anything. His nickname is tax deduction.
You could be gracious by accepting it.
I could be. I told you already I'm really bad at grace. I am a sore loser and I am a sore winner. I have 4 siblings and things get competitive. So it doesn't have to be divine. Does it have to be kind? No? Why not?
Because the kind of things I do may not be the nicest things I do. So we always think of grace as being nice.
So grace, we think of grace as being nice, but sometimes it's not always nice. Okay. How does God's grace affect us when it's not nice? What does it look like sometimes?
It's correcting sin.
He's correcting sin. Okay. We're going to get back. We're going to get to the correction of sin in a little bit here later today. So let's focus on, so we've defined grace and we've said it's not necessarily divine. It has some divinity with it. You know, there can be divine grace, but doesn't always have to be, you know, it's like a square, right? A rectangle is not always, a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't a square, right? Grace can be divine, but it's not always divine. I don't know, maybe my second grade geometry is still wrong. I don't know. I was not a geometry guy. I'm an algebra guy. So, I'm going to read, so we're going to get focused on 1 through 3 again. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes, I almost went to King James. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. If we want to live in grace, and I've been working on this, if we want to see grace, we have to, if we want to live in grace, we have to first see grace, right? We have to notice grace. How many of you guys walk every single day, do everything in your day, you know, from sun up to sundown, and you notice every type of grace that affects you every day? Probably nobody, right? We're insular, right? We're insular people. And everybody likes to blame their generation or they like to blame the country they're from. I think it's just humanity. Humanity is insular. We care about myself. We're up in our own brain. I can't read your thoughts. I can read my thoughts, you know. And so therefore, I only know the way I think, and therefore I become insular. We don't notice what grace is extended. When it talks about he leads me by clear waters, right? You have to notice the clear waters. We notice the stormy waters, don't we? We always notice when we're on the boat with Jesus in the storm, right? We don't necessarily always notice when we're just walking near the calm waters. Grace isn't just about the storms, it's about the calm, and that's the art of noticing. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the art of noticing. That's what the video is about. The video is about getting outside of our insular nature. And again, he doesn't, the presenter or the speaker doesn't say anything about, he doesn't mention grace by name, but you can find it. And again, this is secular, so he doesn't attribute anything to divinity. He doesn't attribute anything to God. In fact, he says probably the opposite. He says, the point isn't religion, but my point is to say, look at it and then take it through the eyes of Christianity, take it through the eyes of grace. This is going to be a long one, so, you got to take a nap halfway through. I'll understand.
The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. The plain fact is that you graduating seniors do not yet have any clue what day in, day out.
He's talking to a class of graduating seniors from
There
college.
happen to be whole, large parts of adult American life that nobody talks about in commencement speeches. One such part involves boredom, routine, and petty frustration. The parents and older folks here will know all too well what I'm talking about. By way of example, let's say it's an average adult day. You get up in the morning, go to your challenging white-collar college graduate job, and you work hard for 8 or 10 hours, and at the end of the day, you're tired and somewhat stressed, and all you want is to go home and have a good supper and maybe unwind for an hour and then hit the sack early, because of course you have to get up the next day and do it all again. And you remember there's no food at home. You haven't had time to shop this week because of your challenging job. So now after work, you have to get in your car and drive to the supermarket. It's the end of a work day, and the traffic is actually very bad. So getting to the store takes way longer than it should. And when you finally get there, the supermarket is very crowded, because of course it's the time of day when all the other people with jobs also try to squeeze in some grocery shopping. So you can't just get in and quickly out. You have to wander all over the huge, overlit store's confusing aisles to find the stuff you want. And you have to maneuver your junky cart through all these other tired, hurried people with cart, et cetera, cutting stuff out for the storm ceremony. And eventually, you get all your supper supplies, except now it turns out there aren't enough checkout lanes open, even though it's the end of the day rush. So the checkout line is incredibly long, which is stupid and infuriating, but you can't take your frustration out on the frantic lady working the register, who is overworked at a job whose daily tedium and meaninglessness surpasses the imagination of any of us here at a prestigious college. But anyway, you finally get to the checkout line's front, and you pay for your food, and get told to have a nice day in a voice that is the absolute voice of death. And then you have to take your creepy, flimsy plastic bags of groceries in your cart with the one crazy wheel that pulls Magdalene to the left, all the way out through the crowded, funky, littery parking lot. And then you have to drive all the way home through slow, heavy, SUV-intensive rush hour traffic, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone here has done this, of course, but it hasn't yet been part of your graduate's actual life routine, day after week, after month, after year, but it will be. And many more dreary, annoying, seemingly meaningless routines besides. But that is not the point. The point is that petty, frustrating crap like this is exactly where the work of choosing is going to come in. Because the traffic jams and crowded aisles and long checkout lines give me time to think. And if I don't make a conscious decision about how to think and what to pay attention to, I'm going to be pissed and miserable every time I have to shop. Because my natural default setting is the certainty that situations like this are really all about me, about my hungriness and my fatigue and my desire to just get home. And it's going to seem for all the world like everybody else is just in my way. And who are all these people in my way? And look at how repulsive most of them are, and how stupid and cow-like and dead-eyed and non-human they seem in the checkout line, or at how annoying and rude it is that people are talking loudly on cell phones in the middle of the line. And look at how deeply, personally unfair this is. If I choose to think this way in the store and on the freeway, fine. Lots of us do. Except thinking this way tends to be so easy and automatic that it doesn't have to be a choice. It is my natural default setting. It's the automatic way that I experience the boring, frustrating, crowded parts of adult life. when I'm operating on the automatic, unconscious belief that I am the center of the world and that my immediate needs and feelings are what should determine the world's priority. The thing is that, of course, there are totally different ways to think about these kinds of situations. In this traffic, all these vehicles stuck and idling in my way. It's not impossible that some of these people in SUVs have been in horrible auto accidents in the past and now find driving so terrifying that their therapist has all but ordered them to get a huge, heavy SUV so they can feel safe enough to drive. Or I can choose to force myself to consider the likelihood that everyone else in the supermarket's checkout line is just as bored and frustrated as I am, and that some of these people probably have much harder, more tedious or painful lives than I do. Again, please don't think I'm giving you moral advice, or that I'm saying you're supposed to think this way, or that anyone expects you to just automatically do it, because it's hard. It takes will and effort. And if you were like me, some days you won't be able to do it, or you just flat out won't want to. But most days, if you're aware enough to give yourself a choice, you can choose to look differently at this fat, dead-eyed, over-made-up lady who just screamed at her kid in the checkout line. Maybe she's not usually like this. Maybe she's been up 3 straight nights holding the hand of her husband who's dying of bone cancer. Or maybe this very lady is the low-wage clerk at the motor vehicles department who just yesterday helped her spouse resolve a horrific, infuriating red tape problem through some small act of bureaucratic kindness. Of course, none of this is likely, but it's also not impossible. It just depends what you want to consider. If you're automatically sure that you know what reality is, including what is really important, if you want to operate on your default setting, then you, like me, probably won't consider possibilities that aren't annoying and miserable. But if you really learn how to think, how to pay attention, then you will know you have other options. It will actually be within your power to experience a crowded, hot, slow, consumer hell type situation as not only meaningful, but sacred, on fire with the same force that the stars. Love, fellowship, the mystical oneness of all things. Not that that mystical stuff's necessarily true. The only thing that's capital T true is that you get to decide how you're going to try to see it. This, I submit, is the freedom of real education, of learning how to be well-adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race, the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. I know that this stuff probably doesn't sound fun and breezy or grandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to sound. What it is, as far as I can see, is the capital T truth with a whole lot of rhetorical niceties stripped away. You are, of course, free to think of it whatever you wish. But please don't just dismiss it as some finger-wagging Dr. Laura sermon. None of this stuff is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions of life after death. The capital T truth is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water. This is water.
Okay, so like I said, it's secular. So he says it's not about religion. To me, it is about religion. To me, Christianity is about fighting that default setting of that insular nature of what we are. And to fight that insular nature is to extend grace, right? And so we talk about the disciple of this discipline of noticing. And that's, to me, what this whole thing is about, is getting out of your own headspace to think about. And that one of my favorite things is to say, it's not, yeah, it might not be true, but it's not impossible. And luckily, none of you guys are married to me except for her. And so she's the only one that has to be with me in my truck when I'm driving. And let me tell you, I've driven in a lot of big cities. Like I said, I lived in LA. So I've driven LA, and I've driven in Dallas, and I've driven in Phoenix, and New York City and all these other places. And I'll tell you right now, Lubbock's the worst. There's something about farmers and college kids getting together that don't make for a very pleasant automotive experience. And so I was the guy that got rid of his little Ford Focus and got a big truck to make myself feel safe around people. And so I understand that. So my whole thing, as I read about grace and is trying to extend grace, is realize that I don't have all the answers in the world. So the art of noticing. You see, it talks about here, it says, to notice something, to truly pay attention is a powerful thing. Children demand it. Spouses feel hurt without it. Does any spouses here want to admit they feel hurt when their other, significant other doesn't notice something? I don't know how many times my wife has walked into a room and she's done one minuscule thing with her hair and she expects me to notice that. Because I don't. I'm a big dumb guy. You have to slap me in the face to get me to pay attention. And so if you've ever been so caught up in watching this, and it says the practice of noticing is a skill. It involves learning to pay attention to gifts that we otherwise take for granted. Stop for a moment and try it. So I'm not going to make you do this right now. But when it talks about a skill, and I want you this week, and none of y'all except for my wife has been in a class with me, I don't believe. I don't recognize y'all. At the end of every, I'm an objective-based guy. I like to have an objective, complete that objective, move on to the next one, complete that objective. That's how I live my life. And so at the end of this tonight, you are going to have a mission for the rest of the week. And that's this mission. The mission is your action steps this week is to practice the skill of noticing. I don't need you to be past the finish line and say, I'm going to extend grace to everybody in the world today and tomorrow, and I'm never going to disagree with anybody ever again, and I'm going to love and hug and do it. No, I don't expect you to do that. Why? Because I don't expect me to do that. And I'm not about to hold you to a standard I'm not going to hold myself to. So this week we're gonna practice noticing. And it's a skill. And how many of y'all have ever heard practice makes perfect? Right? That's a pretty cliche phrase, right? I had a football coach in high school. He would get mad at you because he'd say, who believes practice makes perfect? And then he would raise a hand, he goes, get out of here, you're fired. He goes, and he says, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. You can practice the wrong way every single day, and that is what muscle memory is going to have. It's not going to be perfect. Trust me. I practice my golf swing a lot. It is still trash, right? I am the worst golfer. I've been golfing since I was in second grade. Nobody invites me out unless they want to win. I am the worst. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So we're going to talk about what we can do to help us practice perfectly. So to do this, we have to seize ordinary moments. Again, we have to notice ordinary moments. God works. Okay, here, I'm going to ask a fun question. Just to get rid of the room. Does everybody but here believe in the active power of the Holy Spirit? We believe in an active working Holy Spirit, right? It's not a passive thing, it's active, right? And if you believe in an active Holy Spirit, then we must also therefore believe in an active God, right? That God isn't just sitting up in heaven and sitting back in his lazy boy and watching us live out our lives, right? We believe that he's actively working up there for the good of his plan, right? And for those people who work towards that plan. So, if God is actively working, then that means God must be working in everything, right? Omnipotent, omniscience. We're not going to go into, the fourth dimension or anything like that with this. But, therefore, he must work at all times, everywhere. Which means in the ordinary. We can notice God in the extraordinary, right? We go to God when our father's dying from cancer. Right? We go to God when our kid is born, right? But do we go to God when we make it home safely from work every day, right? Which is, in Lubbock, I think is worth praying about. I work from home for reasons. And so we need to seize the ordinary moments. It's in those ordinary moments where we find a lot of what God's grace is, right? I mean, I love West Texas for the sunsets. And every time I go to bed, I look out there And it's just beautiful. Why? Because I can see it forever and I don't have anything interrupting my view. And so I can see it, and that to me is ordinary. I mean, how many times in the day do we notice the sunrise and sunset, right? But that's a grace of God. God gave me another day. That's grace. That's a gift, right? Every day is a gift. That's why it's called a present, right? Isn't that what Eleanor Roosevelt said? I think so. And then so we get into the Bible and we says, "It shall not want." Is wanting bad? Our whole economy is built on it. I used to tell people like, I used to say to people, America wasn't founded on want, or America wasn't founded on needs. America was founded on wants. Right? Our total economy is built on wants. We live by wants. So what does it mean to you when it says, "I shall not want"? My Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
I shall not complain.
Provides.
You shall not complain. What did you say? Sorry?
He provides.
He provides.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else?
We have to correct our understanding of God.
Okay, we have to correct our understanding of wants. And ask the follow-up question, how so? Or what, let's expound upon that a little bit.
Okay, just because I want it doesn't mean I need it. That goes back to that nice and
Just because I want it doesn't mean I need it, right?
so.
I have a hard time with that. I'm a very quick decision maker. If I find something I want, something that usually means I've decided I needed it. And again, my wife exists.
Could we go down a different road to that?
Sure.
Instead of placing the want on material
Mm-hmm.
or placing the want on what I need, because you have God, you don't have a need for any other kind of thing. The want is, I don't want something besides God.
Okay.
I don't have to have an idol. I don't have to have
So I see.
an alternative to God.
So you're saying, I shall not want, not just for the physical or whatever. You're saying that it goes into the first commandment of, I shall not want anything but, I mean, you're number one, right? That's what I hear you saying to me.
It's a be all and end all,
Okay.
rather than pinpointing it to a thing or several things.
That's
Like you
interesting.
said, if he's omniscient, he's all around, then that's all you need.
There's nothing I lack.
There's nothing I lack.
Because I have God. So I shouldn't have a want. That I want things. If I focus on Him, like you're saying with grace.
Mm-hmm.
I just had an incident just happened just coming to church just now. It's a gentleman behind me, and I can see that.
Was it a black truck?
No.
Okay. I have an AC sticker on my truck. That's pretty easy.
But his headlight, one of his headlights not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed it when we were coming down 19th Street. Well, he turned where I turned into the parking lot. You know, so then we're both walking in, so I catch up with him,
Mm-hmm.
say, I don't know if you know, but your headlight, one of your headlights not working. Because no, I did not know, but you know what else can happen today, you know? And his wife then spoke, and she said, he had a meeting in Abilene today.
Oh, man.
He went all the way to Abilene and it was canceled. You know, and but then, you know, then I'm looking at us, well, look where you're at now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're at church, you know, this was priority to him, you know, but all that other stuff, you know, he's like, you know, basically, no, I didn't know about that, but at the same time, letting him know about it, he's like, you know, appreciate it, but you know, it's just one thing after another happens, you know,
Right.
so.
change of perspective is what I hear. You gave him a change of perspective, or tried to.
Yeah.
Right? It's up to him if he accepts it or not.
A lot of wants are connected to envy.
Okay.
I want what you have.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
That's a real hard time for, I don't know if you know about millennials. I know we get blamed for a lot, rightly so, and wrongly so. But keeping up with the Joneses is pretty hard for us because, you know, I'm not on any social media that's not called Facebook, and I'm barely on that. It's just so that somebody can have a link to click on Married to Jeffrey McDuff for her, and they can see who I am with my goofy pictures and whatnot. So, but a lot of my ilk or kin or whatever you want to call them, of my generation and younger, have this massive problem of looking at all these people's fake lives on the internet and wanting them. And they're willing to get into massive debt to have that. And I don't know if they weren't teaching that, you know, he's going to come a knocking, you're going to have to pay eventually, right? You can only, you're what was it, robbing Peter to pay Paul, basically? Like, yeah, you're going to get that now, but, you know, he's going to come and you're going to have to pay up. And if you don't, then you've ruined your finances for 7 years. So let's go back to that. I lack for nothing. Because that's interesting. So what I hear that say, what that says to me is, I've given you all the tools you need. And I say, well, God, so when God puts me in a situation where I see, I say, I could do this here, but I'm not a really good speaker. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. When we leave here, I will go home and I will insulate myself and shut my door and be by myself. It is very hard for me to talk to people, especially people I don't know. And so when I see people that, you know, could probably use the message of Jesus, right? I sit there and I say, well, I'm not that type of person, right? I'm not Paul. I'm not Peter. I'm not a person who can go out and just talk to anybody. And then when I read this, I feel convicted because now he says to me, I've given you all the tools. You have all the tools. You have to use them. Anybody? Yeah, go for it.
I'll go back to verse 1 of chapter 23, and it says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want."
Mm-hmm.
When it goes into that, "thou shalt not want," then I go back and I think about it. I said, there's also a scripture that tells us, "Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you."
Right.
And so once we're seeking, and we know that the Lord is our shepherd, we know that he has promised that he will give us whatever is in his life.
Right. That's right. And so when we talk to grace, it says, "I shall not want." I've given you the tools. I've given you the ability. I've given you everything that you need to succeed in this moment. I've given you everything that you need to extend grace to somebody else. What's my excuse for not extending grace? Like I said, I come from a big family. I would tell you honestly that 100%, they're not worthy of grace 100% of the time. At least that's my earthly view. That's my non-noticing view. That's my insular view. And so I feel, again, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me, right? How many of us lead ourselves? Right? I think a lot of us, I used to have a favorite saying, it's better ask for forgiveness than permission, right? How many of us live by instead of asking for permission, God, I'm just going to go do it, and then we'll see what happens, and then either it was great or I'll be asking for forgiveness, right? Which almost comes back to thank God we do have grace, right? We have that divine grace. So what keeps us from letting Jesus lead us? Or God lead us? Trinity doesn't really matter, but either way.
Impatience,
Impatience? Why?
because God has his own timing of doing what he does in your life. And so you have to wait sometimes, and it's excruciating.
Yeah.
So we want to do it ourselves and hurry up the process.
How frustrating is it to wait on something that exists outside of time? Right? You can't say, well, God, can you do this on my timeline? Because his timeline is what, millions upon millions of years, or thousands upon thousands of years. He planned Jesus out before anybody could say the word Jesus, right? In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, right? In the beginning, it was already planned. How can you expect to hurry up something like that? What else? What else keeps us from being led? Yeah.
I think you said it earlier. It's human nature.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want human nature. I want godly nature. I wanna see people the way Christ saw people, like he saw a woman at the well, woman who grabbed his hem. So I think that has to be prayed for, because that doesn't come through human work.
Okay. You got something?
Well, and we say it's undeserved, but when we look at ourselves, we think, well, those other people may not deserve it, but I certainly do. And, you know, God, I deserve this. I deserve to have a worry-free life. I deserve to, because I want it.
See, I'm the exact opposite. I think of myself so poorly that I'm like, I don't deserve anything. I'm dirt. So, but that's interesting. See, I would not have thought of that.
It's the other side of the same coin.
Right. It's me, right?
Mhm.
Any other thoughts on what keeps us from being led?
Pride.
Pride?
Mhm.
How many of us are proud? How many of us have pride? I think we can think of every little thing and come up with the dumbest thing to be prideful of. Right? We're not even gonna talk about participation trophies. We'll just talk about like, I did something today that was so minuscule. It didn't matter, but I've decided that I'm the best at it and I'm the best. And therefore that is my pride. Right?
Experience, sometimes you think, I have more experience than that person does, and I know more about it, so therefore, you know, my decisions are better than their decisions.
Okay. See, again, most of my ungracious side comes out when I'm driving. And so therefore my pride comes from well, I've driven in some of the biggest places in the country. Y'all yahoos need to understand how to get on the freeway at, greater than 40 miles an hour. Right. Or when I go to Abilene, when I went to ACU, and 2-lane access roads should not exist.
It's deer.
What?
It's deer.
With deer, yeah. Two-way access roads are abomination. They don't make any sense whatsoever. Who's yielding to who in that regard? So let's have a little fun question here. The phrase "He restores my soul" connotes bringing something back, right? Restoration, a returning or regrouping. Isaiah 49:5 uses the same verb to mean gather. Isaiah 58:12 translates the word as rebuild. And Psalm 19 verse 7 says the law of God revives the soul, right? Restore, revive, rebuild. So with that as a backdrop, what concrete ways do you think David needed this gracious work in his life? Because he's writing this, was David, everybody loves David. Why does everybody love David?
Defeated Goliath.
Okay. Say that again?
He has a heart for God.
Okay, he has a heart for God. Why?
He wants to please him.
But and what in David's life showed that? We have almost his entire life laid bare in a book.
The way he treated
Saul. The way he treated Saul, okay. The way
of grace, and
he's,
he sought God's counsel whenever before he did anything.
did David extend grace to anybody? I must say Saul, mostly because he could have killed him that time, and he didn't.
Also Jonathan's children.
Right. It's not, when one regime comes in, what do they do to the old regime? Right. It's no fantasy. This is not Game of Thrones. This is reality. This is what happened. David didn't do that. He put them up in a place of honor. He fed them, he clothed them, he made sure they were taken care of. Now, was David perfect? No. And I think that's why I like David, because David screws up, right? And David screws up more horribly than I think a lot of people could ever screw up, right? I don't think I'm about to send somebody to their death. At least I hope not. I don't have that kind of power. And so, but yet he still is called a man with God's own heart. And it's because I think he keeps coming back. He trusts, right? So why Why is the word restore important here? To David, why do you think? Forgiveness? What does forgiveness mean to you? Okay.
For all his errors, God still cared for him.
Right. Does that hit home to anybody else? Is the fact that God, even through all of David's error, God still called him a man after his heart? Guys send somebody to their death over some jealousy. So with
That you know, if you mess up, you have another chance.
right. Can anybody live a perfect life that's not named Jesus? No? Would you try? You can try, but you'll fail, right? I mean, it's a foregone conclusion. So when we fail, what is that called? I mean, this is a super simple question. What is it called? There you go, Sid. Thank you, Sid. I've been watching a lot of VeggieTales, guys, so I
don't remember all the exact things about David, but he was given the choice of 3 punishments.
Mm-hmm.
He found it making one himself.
So when he says, "Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I lack nothing." What's the next verse? I can consult the book over here, but anybody have it? He makes me lie. He leads me beside quiet waters. He leads me in the path of righteousness. He refreshes my soul. He guides me on the right path for him. Whose name's sake? For his name's sake. So who is God doing this for? For himself. Why?
Because he loves us.
So God is helping me because he loves us. For his sake. Somebody said reputation. Why reputation?
Well, that's what it is. If it's for his sake, it's his reputation. If he wasn't taking care, to look at this song, you have to look at the Lord as a shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
And a shepherd provides every single thing a sheep needs, because a sheep is so dumb, he cannot live without a shepherd. And so if the shepherd does not take care of his sheep, then that is a reflection on the shepherd himself. So that's his reputation.
Do we have any other examples of God caring about his reputation? As you said.
Well, I think did Moses tell him that if you leave these people here and do away with these people now, then what are the people going to say about you? That would be his reputation.
Okay, he did do that. He kind of that was a car salesman attitude. That was Moses, the used car salesman, to me. Well, I was thinking of when Jesus is talking about, he says, or maybe I think it's Jesus says, "Lord, glorify your name," and then from the heavens comes, "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." And going back to the "I shall not want" or "the Lord is my shepherd," when you talked about going back to the reputation, right? Nothing will be above me, right? So grace is all about what? Simple question. God. We cannot generate our own grace, can we? It has to be given, right? And God is the generator, right? God's the power plant of that grace, right? And to do that, he has to be our shepherd. Now, what shepherd's a sheep, right? Sheep are stupid.
They're the
Yeah.
most dumb animal there is.
Is it? I thought that
Have you never heard that?
I thought the pig was dumb.
No,
the sheep was
no.
dumb. See, I get those two mixed up. I just remember watching a show on Amazon, and it was this celebrity was trying to start a farm with sheep, and they kept jumping over his fence, and he just couldn't figure out why the heck they kept jumping over his fence and doing the dumbest thing in the world. Like, why are you? There's green grass over here. Why are you going into the old pen, jumping over the fence and going where you already ate all the grass? Right. So sheep are dumb. Are humans dumb? Right? I'm stupid. I can tell you that right now. And I remember my stupidity. That's the worst part, is I remember my stupidity. I don't need my wife to remember it for me. But she happily does. Right? Humans are stupid. We need a shepherd. What is significant? How many parables can you think of that have a shepherd in them? Or how many things in the Bible revolve around a shepherd? We talked about David. What was his occupation at first? He was a shepherd. Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. David was mediocre. Humans need shepherds because we're stupid, right? We proved that in the garden. We were given simple instructions and we couldn't follow it. I need an IKEA guide to do that. And if none of you have built IKEA furniture, you're very lucky. But how many of you guys build furniture without looking at the instructions first? I can't follow instructions. I have to look at YouTube videos to see how they did it. And then, whenever I'm working on my truck, I look at YouTube videos and be like, okay, how did this guy do it? Okay, I'm not doing it that way. That was too much work. Surely there's an easier way to do that. And then I usually break something. Humans are like that, right? We think we know better. Again, the garden, we had a relationship with God. We had a one-on-one. We walked and talked. We don't do that anymore. Why? Because we couldn't follow simple directions. The direction was, hey, this is all good stuff. You see that one thing, that one little thing, and I feel like we're 5-year-olds. I feel like God treats us like 5-year-olds. Because if I told my son there's this one little thing over here you can't touch, what do you immediately go do? You go touch it. That's why you never put a big red button in front of a 5-year-old. They're going to blow themselves up, right? That's why they're not allowed to handle fireworks. At least I hope they're not. Mine's not. So we need this grace. And so we talked about the art of noticing, the skill of noticing. We're going to work on that this week because we're going to try to notice how we can extend grace to other people. We can give them a gift, right? I don't mean a physical gift. I mean just being patient. Patience is a gift in and of itself. Just sitting there and not thinking that I am the center of the universe, that I know better than you, right? That your wants and needs don't matter. And my perfect example of this is in the video, I was talking about driving. And I remember one time I was driving and the guy came up behind me on my bottom and started flashing his lights. And I decided that I was Batman and I was going to bring justice to the situation because I'm driving a big black Tundra and I'll just slow down next to a semi. Can't get around me, right? And then the person I was with at the time was like, well, what if they have an emergency? What if they have to get to the hospital and you're, as Batman, providing justice, stopping them? Like the video says, it's not impossible that that's true. So that's what we're going to work on this week. We're going to work on noticing because we're not going to immediately be perfect grace givers, are we? I'm not. I'm going to screw up when we leave this room. I'm going to tell you that right now. I've probably screwed up 10 times already. So we need to be better grace givers. We need to extend, like the shepherd that extended that grace because you are given every tool you need. So we're going to work on the noticing.
I was thinking about something this week about kindness. That there are so many times that I have either encountered or seen people who are being kind, but it's really more of a self-centered kindness. They say, I'm going to give you this And here's the example. I was listening to a lady who said they were part of a flood in the Mideast or in the Missouri or wherever. They were in a flood, and for the first couple days or week, there was lots of stuff that poured in. But when that all went away for the next year, they had nobody coming to help them, nobody showing up, nobody except sojourners probably, but they had nobody coming to help them. And so that kindness appeared to me to be more, oh, I'm going to give them something, and they felt good about giving it for themselves. And if they were really kind, they would have showed up a week later or a month later and helped them when they really needed the help. But it was more self-centered kindness. And I think that giving grace, if we're going to do that next week, we need to realize that just because it's our assignment, we don't go out and do it and say, well, got an A+ on that assignment.
Right.
You know, if you're doing it for you, then it's not really grace.
Right. You do it for the likes. That's what we have.
There was a program on TV that ran about one season. It's called Beautiful People. And they had it all set up for this various groups for a sign to take and come to the interview. And they had to park several blocks away. And they had things happen to them on the way to the interview. One place they had a bicycle carrier fell in front of them. Some of them walked around him, but some of them picked him up. Another place, the lady was coming out of the grocery store with a bag of groceries and fell. And ones that stopped and helped her were the ones that wound up the finest in this. I can't remember all of them, I just remember those two, but like I say, it was interesting to watch that because they had cameras watching these people.
They were showing grace each time they stepped in and helped.
Do you think they would have all extended grace if they had known cameras were on them?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But this was basically the fact that they were looking at them without being seen.
You know, we as Christians, we have a helper within us, the Holy Spirit that lives inside us that continually works in our lives and in our thought plans to help us to change our ways. You know, like the gentleman said, if we leave here this week and we go into the store and we start doing things because we talked about it here, practicing that every day and allowing the Spirit to work in our lives will make a permanent change. And you said repetition brings on change. So if we think of those things, especially in the grocery store, you know, the people are jumping in line, or this person jumped, especially to the cashier. She or he is always burdened with a lot of,
Millennials and Zers, we like to call it, a lot of times we're struggling with the problem of self-attitude and self-esteem. And a lot of, again, we're getting that insular. So these days, it was kind of a coined phrase. It's called practice a attitude of gratitude. I don't know if you guys have heard that, attitude of gratitude. So I started what's called a gratitude journal. And the first thing is, did you notice anything today that you needed to be have gratitude for? And again, I work from home, so I don't get out much, which is good for you guys. But even day to day, like in the first 5 minutes of my morning, is there anything I needed to be gratitude? What's the first thing you could probably have gratitude for when you in the morning?
good night's sleep.
Well, I never get one of those. My son watches Scooby-Doo and it causes nightmares, so I don't get any of those. But that's good. No, you get a good night's sleep, right? That's gratitude. Life, just the fact that the very basic fact that you have today, right? That even if you messed up yesterday, which I did, you have today to do better, right? That's why I tell my son, I always ask him, like, why did you do that? Because I always want to know, I don't understand how a 5-year-old works. I don't understand how I work. Why did you do that? And then he'll tell me, and I'll probably think that's a terrible reason. And then I'll say, okay, well, do better. And my wife doesn't like that because it puts a lot of pressure on it. I'm like, sorry, what'd I do? Right? I messed up, and do better. So with that attitude of gratitude, that's grace. And so this week, notice, that's all you gotta do. You don't have to go out and give somebody $25. You don't have to go out and park somebody's shopping cart for them or help them load their groceries. All you have to do is get out of your own head and try to notice the other things around you that are grace for you, right? Maybe you didn't have any traffic lights on the way home today, right? Little things. All right, guys, I'll see y'all.